welcome back, everybody, to the Galaxy Unlimited podcast, episode 7, I believe. It's either 6 or 7, but we're starting to get into those higher numbers. Thank you guys so much for continuing to watch the channel and view our content. We really appreciate the support you guys have been showing. Today it is me and Chancellor.
Hello, hello.
And we are bringing you guys today a series we're going to start utilizing the podcast for at least the next few weeks, depending on how well it does. And that is our Total Deck Breakdown series. So what we're going to do in this series is we're going to dive deep into these meta decks. And then after we do some of the meta decks, some of our favorite rogue contenders, or depending on how well the series does and how long it goes, we could even dive into some Twin Sun stuff and just evaluate what we think would be a good singleton deck. But that's kind of so in general, we're just going to talk about the individual cards in the list, what the deck is trying to do, how it matches into other matchups and tournaments and things like that. So before we dive too far into that, let's go ahead and just, kind of reintroduce ourselves and talk about what we've been playing recently. So Chancellor, what's been your decks recently?
So, my name is Chancellor Pacheco. Just a Star Wars playing foo. So the deck that I've been playing recently that I would be considering my pet deck would be Luke Green. I was at Luke Cunning during set 2. Didn't get to play Luke during set 1 because I wasn't involved with the game very much at that point of its lifespan. But sorry, take a drink of tea. Luke Green, it's super interesting. It can be extremely powerful and aggressive, and at the same time, it can be very control-based and late game just bomb dropping. So, I like where it's placed. My Jango matchup's really good, because of all the shields I can generate with Luke. And so it poses a problem, especially when you're running low cost Sentinel units. It's pretty solid.
Absolutely. Yeah, I played against your Luke Green list that you've been kind of tweaking and modifying over the last few weeks, the other day actually, and I think it's coming along great, and it definitely has a unique game plan with the shields and the low cost units that then kind of snowball into the bigger payoffs. So I actually like the deck a lot. It's I haven't really been interested in Luke as a leader from a personal standpoint, but the way I've been seeing you build, when you sent me your deck list the other day, I was actually whoa, this deck list seems sweet.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I love about even this game in general is just being able to explore a variety of different decks, and realistically not solely just one. But I think my second pet deck is probably definitely gonna have to be Mace Windu. Hard control
Mace is sweet still.
But yeah, this one, I was really proud of the list. I was really happy with the response I got from you, especially from it, just because it's it seems like I'm doing something.
Oh, dude,
That seems legit.
I think the list is awesome. I mean, you get to play. I really like what you've been doing with 2 cards in particular, and number 1 is Barriss Offee. I think it's Offee. Playing her on turn 1, if they don't, pretty much the only immediate out is Daring Raid or ISB Agent, I guess. So if they don't have one of those 2 cards, you get a turn 1 Barriss with a shield that you can then put a lightsaber or a General's Blade on in the following turn, which I think is awesome. I think that's sweet.
Yeah, I've noticed that General's Blade puts in a lot of work in this deck, and honestly, Yoda has been such a G for me. It comes to just being so aggressive. There's been games against Anakin Blue where I just mop the floor because I just attack into his stuff, control the board, and wait till I drop something huge like a Luke.
Yeah. That's another favorable matchup for you, I think, right? Because Anakin wants to trade up by using smaller units and attacking, but if they're attacking into a shield, they're not trading up, they're just taking off shields, which I think is like
Ex-
really bad for them. So,
Well,
um,
it even has a good matchup, and it always has like Luke in general. Even the cunning build I had a good matchup against Sabine, and that's just
ooh,
because of
that's
the
true.
restore. How much restore you can pull off in this deck is insane.
In all honesty, I think ambush aside, because everything with ambush is just like cracked.
Yeah,
Ambush aside, I think restore is probably my second favorite keyword. Like restore is like, and that's something, another thing I like about the game a lot is like life gain matters. Like it does not feel like life gain matters in Yu-Gi-Oh especially, or like Magic, but in this game life gain is like a big deal.
it is. It really is, and that's the cool thing about it is because when you have like let's just say any keyword that synergizes with the rest of the deck matters, right?
Yeah.
So that's the cool part about it is like you could be running like I ran a just an example really fast. It was like a Bosk yellow, I think it was Bosk yellow, and it was like a underworld bounty hunter tribal deck, and I drew like 10 cards and searched 20 and like searched the top 20 cards. It was insane. The turn I had against our one of our friends locals was insane, and he's like, this is a fun deck to watch. It was so powerful, and it's even though his deck ended up winning, I still had options where if I had certain meta cards in it, it would just be broken.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and then the other card in your list that like when I was playing against it the other day that I was just like, oh man, this is like really good and really annoying is Village Protectors, which is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
3 cost 2/2 Sentinel with shielded, which hilariously when it enters play you can put another shield on it with Luke, so it's a double shielded Sentinel, which is just like really annoying to deal with.
It really is. I'm not gonna take that away from you. It's probably one of the most annoying things. I've played against it, and I'm like, well, it tastes of my own medicine here, I
Uh,
guess. This is lame.
But yeah, I guess in summary to move on here, I really like the Luke Green list that you're playing with. It's really cool. I like it's unique, which I really enjoy.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Um, as for me, I have if you watch the channel's most recent video, you'll know I am back on my BS. I am back on Palpatine. I was so excited for set 3 to release all the new cards. I got to experiment with all the new leaders, and I just ended up like being back on Palpatine, which is kind of hilarious. But um, yeah, Palpatine Yellow is now exceptionally viable, and I've been really enjoying the hell out of playing it. So yeah, looks like Palpatine Yellow is going to be my deck for now. I'm also experimenting with Anakin Blue, but I have a hot take actually, and I'm gonna just dangle this one out there as a little teaser. I don't think Anakin Blue's that good.
How dare you?
I think the deck is good, but I don't think it is to the level of Sabine and Jango, even Cad Bane, Tarkin Town. I don't think it's on the level of those three decks in particular, but I do like the deck. It's really fun to play. It's a nice mid-range deck with a good flow. Um, I enjoy playing it. I just don't think comparatively to the other meta decks, I don't think it's that good compared to those.
You know, I I kind of see what you mean because I also built it because it's like I told myself I'm like, well, if I'm gonna have a meta deck, I would rather be Anakin Blue, some new leader, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Rather than trying to play Sabine and join the dark side. Like I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but as I'm playing it, I'm like realizing how troublesome it really is to like present a solid board state for
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Yep. That's the thing.
Which is
Like
great.
your units are trading up, which is always incredible, but your units are trading up and usually dying in exchange. So you're getting a lot of one for one trades, which if you match into like a hard control deck or a super aggro deck, Like Sabine does not care about your one for one trades. Like they're just going to play more small stuff and just punch your face over and over and over again.
Yeah, yeah, it's very
Um,
true.
and then when you match into a deck like Django, like they don't care if you trade one for one occasionally because most of the time they're going to be exhausting your units that are able to attack. And then when you finally do get to attack with them, they die. And then so the next unit you play that can't attack, they'll just exhaust it the following turn. So
Yeah.
yeah, I like. Don't get me wrong. I think Anakin Blue is good. Like I do think the deck is good. I just don't think it's uh, how do I say this? I don't think it's as good as like the top meta decks. Like I don't think it's close to as good as the top meta decks.
Which is totally understandable because one, it's been one of the most represented. It reminds me of like if Pokemon people are out there, it reminds me of the Charizard EX deck that was very highly represented in the meta, but then just couldn't really close out a game. Like it couldn't close out a tournament and win
Mm-hmm.
outright. And so, um, I do see where you're coming from. I think it's a good deck. I just don't think it has that closing power that everyone think it might have.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, like I said, I think the deck is good, just not as good as some people are would lead you to believe. It has favorable trades. When Anakin does deploy, he is immediately a problem, which is always nice. But
True, if you deploy him correctly.
yeah, if you deploy him correctly. And the deck is like somewhat difficult to play, somewhat tricky to play. You got to like really know the matchups and know when to take what actions, yada yada yada. And like I said, I really enjoy it, and I think that you enjoy it quite a bit too. But yeah, anyway, I'm kind of rambling at this point. So um, yeah, that's my thoughts on Anakin. And I've been playing a lot of Palp Yellow, and I have a sweet Palp Blue list that I'm gonna show up to locals with sometime soon and try out.
Really,
So um,
blue coming to locals. Wow.
oh baby, back to Palp Blue, just a little different. Anyway, let's go ahead and dive into this total deck breakdown. So today we are talking about none other than Jango Fett, a deck that has been topping events very frequently. It did not top the most recent PQ in Bologna, but
Which
it
is
has,
surprising.
which is very surprising. Um, but it has been topping a lot of other events outside of that individual event. So I think the reason there is because it was so represented in like all these other tournaments. I think the players at PQ Bologna planned specifically for Django, and they planned on how to beat that matchup. They sideboarded directly for that matchup. So I think there's just a lot of preparation that maybe led to Django's downfall in that particular event. But I still think that the
Yeah.
deck is very good and very meta because it's been having a lot of representation in other events.
No, it's true. I think that the the Django list itself is strong, and I think people are going to be like, "Oh, well, no, it's just a replacement Boba," and realistically, it is. Like, you don't want to kid yourself on this one,
Yeah.
but its play style is very different. It's like a soft control. And the reason I say that, and I don't think maybe people would agree, they might be like, "Oh, it's aggro," whatever. I really don't care. But the fact is that you're able to tap your opponent's units at almost at will. And so, I mean, you get to choose the damage one most of the time when it comes to cards you play. And then Django's effect lets you exhaust a unit if it has been damaged that turn. So it's just like, what?
Mm, yeah.
you know, you want to try to make shields with Luke because that's your play. And if you don't, you lose the game. Well, I'm going to deal a damage to him because it's not just, you know, non-leader units, it's all units,
Right.
his ability effects. And so it's just extremely powerful.
Yeah. And I definitely agree with what you're saying. Like the deck feels very aggro, feels very aggressive because like its whole game plan is to like hit you with these smaller overpowered units and like tap your stuff down when it does damage and so on and so forth. And if you look at like a lot of the lists that are going around, they don't play hardly any like higher costed units. But what they do with those lower costed units is they play a lot of them and they deal damage to your stuff to tap it down. So they're controlling your half of the board with their Jango ability and their smaller units. But at the same time, they're like aggressively hitting your face with all these like overstated, cheap yellow and red units a lot of the time. So I
Yeah,
definitely get
for
what you're
sure.
saying, where it's like it feels like a soft control, but an aggressive soft control, which um, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, so let's go ahead and start breaking down this list. So we're going to be talking about, we'll start with the ground units that Django typically runs. And we'll start talking about Django Tarkentown in particular to begin with, because that seems to be the most popular variant. But we'll go
Mhm.
over some other like tech options for that list, and then we'll also go over some other Django lists that are popping up here and there and showing some representation. So
Are you
yeah,
looking at the list that I shared on Discord, or do you want to share your list that you have in
um,
front of you with me?
yeah, no, I'm looking at the one that we're sharing in Discord, and then I also just have
Perfect.
like other card options in a separate tab.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Yeah,
yeah. So okay,
perfect.
so the first unit that we're looking at here, well, I guess we'll just cover like the first three because they're all pretty darn similar. Is Death Star Stormtrooper, ISB Agent, and Greedo. Those seem to be pretty popular undercosted ground units in Django Tarkentown. And I think certainly the most impactful out of all of those is ISB Agent. So if you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know what ISB Agent does, it's a one cost yellow villainy, so cunning villainy ground unit um, that when it is played deals you may reveal an event in your hand and deal 1 damage to a unit, and that counts for Django's ability of dealing a unit dealing damage to an enemy unit, so it allows your tap to be live.
Yeah, I think it's honestly probably one of the most annoying cards too, because again, like if I play against Django Red, I find myself, you know, looking at my bears and going, that's a cool play, you know. And if I have restored arc in my hand, I tend to just play that over Barris. Like I will bury Barris
Right.
just to play restored arc, just to deal with the that guy and having a unit on the board and not having it die.
Right. Yeah, and that's something we um, like kind of alluded to when we were talking about Luke Green, is that the Barris play is really, really good if it resolves effectively, but against Django, sometimes it doesn't because they open with ISB agent. They play it for one, they reveal an event, and they deal 1 damage to your Barris, which unfortunately happens to be a 1/1, and they've instantly killed your guy before you can give it a shield. So you're pretty much forced to take the initiative if you, or seize the initiative if you started the turn. So
Mhm.
ISB agent is like one of the best cards in the Django list, I would say overall, because it's just so effectively costed. It's a 1 drop, 1/3, so it's got good toughness. And it just has that damaging ability that makes it so you can tap down any one of your opponent's units. Like it's such efficient, like damage prevention, essentially.
Yeah, I would say it's probably tied for the um and this is again like most of this deck. It has what three. I'm still looking at three legendaries. Yeah, that's it. At least the one that we're looking at, the Kylo's Tie Silencer,
Yeah.
and um, being able to tap your opponent's stuff down because of the damage is fantastic. And so, ISB Agent, Elite P38, Starfighter, Ruthless Raider, those things just give you so much control, and it's disgusting.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. So ISB agent in that respect is like very efficient tap down, like quote unquote control of the board, like we were talking about before. Um, you can reveal like in this deck that even the list that we're looking at, which is not like I would not say it's one for one across the board. a standard list, but it's very similar to what most of these decks are playing. And in this list, they're playing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16 events just that I'm seeing right here. And that's before sideboarding. So your ISB agent a lot of the time is going to have something that you're able to reveal and just effectively tap down your opponent's stuff before they're able to hit you for damage. So it shuts down a lot of like turn one plays that some decks can do, like the Barris play and Luke Green, or it just like gets some chip damage onto a unit, which is always good because that means that it can then trade up into that unit if they need to on the following turn. So yeah, ISB agent is just really efficient, and I think the reason that these lists are playing Death Star Stormtrooper is just simply that it's like efficient damage, right? Like it's a 1-cost 3/1. So they just swing for 3 every time if they don't immediately answer it.
No, it's yeah. I mean, it's disgusting. The aggressiveness that the deck provides with its units, it's silly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. It's like there's not much more for me to say about it. I just what you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 starters.
Right. Yep.
As units. It's unbelievable.
And I think one of the things you'll notice about these Jango lists that we're talking about today is they have one overarching common theme between all of the list, and that is that they are extremely efficient with their resource usage, and that's why the deck is so good, because it can efficiently use all of these cards in a way that not a lot of other decks can. Because it's preventing so much of the incoming enemy damage by tapping their stuff down and or using their removal spells to get rid of it, or trading up with their like overstated, efficiently costed units. So yeah, these decks are just use their resources and their units extremely efficiently, and that's why the deck is so potent.
I agree on that one. You will not get a disagreement with me there. I think that just its sheer ability to play multiple threats almost every single turn, right? So turn one, yeah, you're playing a starter, but it's still an aggressive threat. And then say like resource 5 or 6, which it does fine and comfortable with, you're playing a couple lurking TIE Phantoms or a 7th Fleet Defender. Like it's just the amount of pressure that you can bring is just insane. So yeah, maybe it is like an aggro soft control like hybrid, but if you just maintain the constant pressure, you don't lose.
Right. Exactly. And that's kind of what we were alluding to before we started diving into the cards. Just like the deck as a whole feels like a very aggressive but also control style like deck list, which is I mean the deck is just powerful overall. It's very good. To move into the third ground unit that we were talking about is Greedo. Greedo is probably one of the most popular, just like cheap cutting units because it's a 3/1 for 1, and when defeated, you can discard the top card of your deck, and if it's not a unit, you may deal 2 damage to an enemy ground unit. So again, it's punching face for 3 very efficiently because it only costs 1. And then when it's defeated, if you do hit a non-unit off the top of your deck, you can damage something for 2 on the ground and also tap it with Jango's ability. So Greedo ties into the game plan, I would say, almost perfectly here.
Yeah, so Greedo being able to a 1 resource for a 3/1, you want him to die. So you want him to trade with a unit. You're using him in that way. And if they don't play a unit, like you said, you just go absolutely bonkers and start swinging in 3 damage to their face every single time to their base. The one thing I do love about Greedo is that he not only can trade it with like smaller beginning units, but if you get that, discard a card from your deck if it's not a unit, deal 2 damage. If you haven't used Tarkin Town, you have the potential to deal 8 damage to a unit So,
Mm-hmm.
and at the least, you're going to deal 6. So, I mean, it has the capability and synergy with the deck to be able to take out big units.
Right. And just think, I want everybody that's listening right now to just think about that for a second. This is exactly what we're talking about when we say this deck is so efficient with its cards. You play a 1 cost Greedo, it survives a turn. Let's say you're on a higher resource turn, they have this big unit that you're like, oh crap, this thing's going to start hurting me really badly. So you run your Greedo into it. It does 3 damage. Maybe you deal another 2. And then your follow up action that does not cost you any resources is deal 3 damage to it with Tarkentown. So it's like you dealt 6, sometimes 8 damage for 1 resource. And it's just like insane.
Yeah, and again, it's just the awesome synergy of the deck. You everything works together. And if there's any kind of like lesson for new players when it comes to deck building, this is like the shell of synergy that you want to achieve with whatever you're playing, whatever kind of style of deck you want to play. Just realize like doing too much or having like oh these are all powerful cards, but they all like do very different things is weaker than again having such a simple list like this Jango Red that we're looking at that has 3 legendaries and oh no, well 2 because of the sideboard, but or 4 because or 5, sorry, 5 total legendaries because of the sideboard.
Yeah.
And I mean like cards in total, not type like different cards. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, but the ability to just take all these low rarity cards and win tournaments, come on, like this is what you strive to do
Yeah.
every single time you build a deck.
Absolutely. Very very well said. Like this is the epitome of like efficient synergy. And it's just like from what I have not played the deck personally. I've played against it a lot. But from what I've heard, the deck is like really fun to pilot as well. So
Yeah, because it doesn't. I'm not gonna say it takes thinking out of it because that's kind of insulting in my opinion.
yeah,
But like
definitely.
in a way, it can. You know, because if you memorize, it's kind of like Sabine, right? And I'm not trying to throw shade at Django Red. I think it's a lot more fair than Sabine.
Oh yeah.
Um, definitely throwing shade at Sabine. Uh, but just I don't know. Its ability not to necessarily pilot itself, but to make it easier for you to make decisions,
hmm
I think makes it a very fun and user-friendly deck, especially for beginners, because you're not going to be spending an arm and a leg to make this deck.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. Again, just well said. Like this deck is, yeah, it's got a very synergistic game plan, which makes the like mastery of being able to pilot it a little bit easier to achieve, which is always like something you want in a competitive environment deck. So yeah, Greedo, because of its synergy and efficiency, really benefits and rewards like um, a skilled and or like experienced pilot of the list. So um, yeah, the deck is just strong. One more thing I want to touch on about Greedo and why I think this card is like one of the best in the list is that you play your 3/1 Greedo for 1. It's let's say it's mid game or late game. You run your Greedo into something, it dies. You dealt 3 damage to something, so you can exhaust something with Jango. When Greedo dies, you can deal 2 damage to another unit. If you have that counts as having damaged a unit with a friendly unit. So if you deploy your Jango, you can also exhaust another thing that turn, which is like you can exhaust 2 things in one turn with Greedo, which is so good.
Yeah, that's I haven't actually had that happen to me yet, and now that you talk about it, it like terrifies me.
Yeah, like yeah, Greedo is real good. Okay, I'll I promise we'll move a little faster through some of these cards, but like those first 3 are just like so important to the list as a whole and kind of like explaining what the deck is trying to do that we needed to spend a little time talking about those. Anyway, the next card we see here in the list is Tai LN Fighter. It's just a 2/1 vanilla in space for 1, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, just one. Puts pressure on the board. That's pretty much it.
Yep. A lot of these, like Jango lists, you'll notice as we go through them, are space race lists, meaning that they play a ton of space units, and they're just trying to take advantage of that fact that they can just punch your face with a bunch of space units. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so just really efficient. The next card we see is Swoop Down, which again synergizes with the space race aspect of the deck. So if you're having trouble with like higher powered ground units with all your space units that you're playing in this deck, you can swoop down and take them all out because you get +2, +0, and they get -2, -0, so they don't do a lot of damage to you in return. As well as it gives your unit Saboteur, which is, I mean, an insane keyword.
Again, it makes my. It's funny because we say that my matchup is good in against things like this. If they were just to play more Saboteur deck or Saboteur cards, it would be trash for
Yeah.
me. But I mean, I think it's a good card to not only just deal with the shields that you don't necessarily see a lot of. It's just to deal with those pesky ground units that you might not have drawn an ISB agent or a Death Star Stormtrooper or even a Greedo, um, but you have a lurking TIE Phantom, right? So it's going to deal 6 damage to the unit. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a great card.
Yeah. Swoop Down's really good. The
Mhm.
next card we see here in the list is Daring Raid, and this one we kind of got to explain a little bit. Daring Raid it's a 1 cost event that says deal 2 damage to a unit or a base. That's just like a really efficient game closer. When you get into the late game, it's just like, oh, that 2 damage came out of nowhere for 1 cost. But realistically, what Django is using this card for is just getting chip damage on something at an efficient cost, and then finishing it off with their units that they play that deal like slightly larger chunks of damage. And so what I mean by that is you play your ISB agent, which deals 1 damage to a unit by revealing your Daring Raid in hand, and then you play your Daring Raid, which deals another 2 damage to a unit. Um, and then if it still hasn't defeated that unit, that you have only so you've essentially, bear with me, we've paid 2 resources to deal 3 damage. After that, if you still haven't dealt with that particular unit, you can just Tarkin Town it, deal another 3, boom, it's gone. And that's another aspect of Daring Raid is your very efficient chip damage that you can then use Tarkin Town to deal a lot more than they were expecting. So Daring Raid ends up trading up on a lot of units in a lot of scenarios.
That's true. It does, and like you said, it gets you that like cheeky little bit of last damage to be like, ha.
Yeah,
Puts your
I've
opponent in an awkward position. It's like, dang it.
yeah, absolutely. I've died to Daring Raid a couple of times playing against Django, and it's like, god dang it, I forgot about this card.
Right. I actually, when I first started, a little segue, just really quick. When I first started playing this game, I played Leia Green or Leia Red, excuse me, and I won because of Daring Raid. It was pretty sweet.
Let's
Mhm.
go.
Yep,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, so Daring Raid really synergistic with the list, especially in any deck that plays Tarkin Town. Like Daring Raid just gets really good. It's basically deal 5 damage for 2 actions and 1 resource, which is insane. Um, the next card we see here in the list is usually run at one of. I've seen list with 2 copies, but it's almost always ran at 1 copy, which is Force Choke. Deal 5 damage to a non-vehicle unit. It costs 2. If you control a force unit when you play this event, it discounts itself by 1. So it's just really efficient, high damage removal. Um, and again, synergizes with Tarkin Town. So you can deal 8 damage for 2 actions, 2 resources, which is absurd.
Yeah, and excuse me, sorry. The I don't necessarily think running two is terrible,
No, 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 no.
but again, like how we were discussing, I think the one of is just fine because you're running other options that help control the board and control the pace of your opponent at the same time as putting pressure. And giving your opponent a card isn't something you always want to be doing, right?
Mm,
So, um, and the fact that you can't, it has to be a non-vehicle kind of like limits it. But uh, I think that, you know, one, it's great. Two, okay, if you're trying to like maybe cover down on a slot that you don't have, if you're trying to copy the specific list that we're looking at. Um, yeah, I mean, it's good. It takes out what Bosk, any like Ayla, Sakura. I think it kills.
Yeah.
Um,
Takes out
yeah,
Bosk. It
it
takes
it, it
out
does it
Ayla.
does its yeah, it does its job. Let's just say that.
Yeah, definitely does it jobs. It takes out the droids. It takes out like it puts high damage on those like big units like Vader or Luke or Obi-Wan. It puts within reach of 1 damage. So you like ISB agent, reveal your force choke, deal 1 damage to Obi-Wan, tap him down. Then you play force choke and kill the Obi-Wan, which is pretty efficient to get rid of a unit like that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just good. Force choke is a good like supplemental option when you need like high damage for low cost, which again benefits the Jango game plane of being efficient. The next card we see here in the list, which you'll see in a lot of like pretty much every like bounty hunter based cunning list, which is Cartel Spacer, which is a villainy cunning 2 cost 2/3 space unit that says when played, you may exhaust if you control another cunning unit. You may exhaust an enemy unit that cost 4 or less. So it's just like damage prevention for an efficient cost, also on a pretty decent space body. So just a good card.
Yep. Just again that ability to apply pressure and do something else. I think that's kind of what this deck strives on, is being able to do multiple things with one card.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, the next card we see here, No Good to Me Dead. You'll see this in almost every villainy cunning deck. It's just really efficient damage prevention again. Pretty much prevents something from attacking for 2 turns, which gives you time to deal with it if you're playing a lot of like low cost, high damage cards like Django is. Um, yeah, No Good to Me Dead is so strong. Oh, I guess I should explain what the effect is, huh? It's a 2 cost event that says exhaust an enemy unit. It cannot ready this round, which includes the regroup phase. So it's pretty much out of commission for 2 turns.
Yep. It's kind of a pain because you can do it to leaders too. So it's just
Yes. Yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah. You can do it to leaders, which against Anakin is really good.
yeah, it's hilarious actually.
It's like, oh, I
It's like,
see
oh,
you've deployed your leader. It'd be a shame if he's exhausted for 2 turns in a row, so I can kill him.
yep. And then the Anakin player slaps their forehead.
Just like, oh, god dang it.
Yeah.
The next one, we don't really need to talk too much about this card. It's Kylo's TIE Silencer. It's a like you're pretty much never using the effect of this card, so you can almost always just treat it as a vanilla. But it's a space unit in aggression villainy. It's a 2 cost 3/2, so it's just efficient damage in space.
Yeah. It's just yeah. It's that. It is what it is. And if
Yeah,
you
it is what it
uh
is.
yep, and if you discard it, then you can play it from your discard pile. So
Yep.
obviously paying its resource cost, but um, somehow if they make you discard it, you go, okay, cool,
Yeah.
play it.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. If they like force throw you, you can just get rid of your Kylo's TIE Silencer and be like, okay, I'm gonna play this, so I didn't actually lose any cards when you force through me.
Yep. Yeah, because starting off with a 3/2 in space isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, no, not at all. Or if like mid game, if a deck is like, let's say Ray Tarkentown pillages you, you can just like, okay, I'll discard my TIE Silencer. I'll play my TIE Silencer from the discard pile.
Yeah, yeah. Cool cards, bro.
Yeah, nice pillage. The next 2 cards are basically the same card, pretty close anyway. It's funny that you mentioned Saboteur is a problem for Luke because one of these cards gives it Saboteur. But these cards are 3 copies of Surprise Strike, which is attack with a unit. It gets +3/+0 for this attack for a 2 cost. The other one is Breaking In, which is a 2 cost. Give a unit +2/+0 and Saboteur and attack with it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so these basically do the
Excuse me.
same thing. It just increases your damage output with your smaller units for low cost.
Yeah, and Again, you're doing two things with one card, right? You're not
Yeah.
stacking effects as to where, oh, you're giving him blah, but then you have to wait to attack, right? You're able to attack and it's getting the buff right away, or you're attacking, it's getting the buff, and it's having Saboteur.
Right.
So I think they're just, again, they synergize really well with the deck of doing the 2-in-1 kind of
Yep.
play.
Just exceptionally efficient, like cost and as well as action economy. These cards are just so good and cunning. Because like Chancellor said just now, you're attacking and giving a boost to something with by playing one card. So you're basically two for one in your action economy, which is always good.
Yep.
Um, Next unit we see here is 7th Fleet Defender, which is a 3/2 in space for 3. Or is it for 2? I think it's for 3. Sorry, let me check
Seven
that.
fleet, it's a 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 3-drop, 3 power, 2 toughness, shielded.
Yep.
So again, you're dropping a unit that has a great stat line for being a 3-drop, especially because it's getting shields.
Yep.
So your opponent has to deal with the shield to deal with the unit, period. Unless you're running blue.
Yeah.
Then you just
Unless you're running blue.
perilous position of tie, the 7 fleet defender, and then they cry. No, just kidding.
Yep. And they go, oh.
Um, yeah, and you're like, oh, why would you waste it? Um, no, again, it puts pressure, makes your opponent have to have something to deal with it or use resources to deal with it. It's just a great card. Great tempo.
Yep. Absolutely. Um, and continuing along this theme, the next card we see in the list is one of the unique units. It's Punishing One, which is a 3-cost aggression villainy 3/4. When an upgraded enemy unit is defeated, you may ready this unit. Use this ability only once each round. So it's just like sometimes comes down and is immediately ready to attack something within the same turn cycle, which is always good. So it's just another efficient like space unit that has good toughness for space. Like 4 toughness in space is really good.
Yeah, and I think it, I don't know if that main ability of itself comes into play often. I'd have to ask, but because if you look at the list, how many uh, upgrades do we run? Like none. So,
Mm,
bounty is an upgrade, and the one thing I think it's great about it is it just again puts a big butt on the space arena or field, but it gives you the ability to go. If I did take this out, say that someone has a lightsaber, a Jedi lightsaber, or a fallen lightsaber or whatever on their unit, you can just kill it, putting this back, or untap it after you play it and hit for 3 damage and keep that momentum going,
right.
as well as controlling the board.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's exactly like when it comes up is like ironically against Luke Green or against Anakin Blue when they're playing Jedi lightsaber or General's Blade. I think that's probably the only scenarios when that really comes up. Um,
Yep.
but yeah, it comes up. I'm sure. I'm sure it comes up like every once in a while, maybe.
I'd have to say it does, yeah.
Um, the next card, if you've been playing Star Wars Unlimited at all in any capacity, you know this card because it's very good. That is Lurking TIE Phantom, a 3-cost 2/2 with Raid 2. And also, just this little important blurb of text that says this unit can't be captured, damaged, or defeated by enemy card abilities.
Yeah, that's annoying. No,
Yeah,
I think it's great. The raid 2, the can't defeat it with blue cards unless it's giving it minus stats, like a -2, um, or whatever the case may be. I just think in a meta heavy, the Django heavy meta, if that's what you have, you locals, or if you're going to big tournaments and that's what you're playing against. You know, I'm trying to find a card I have in my stuff, but it behooves you to run make an opening if you're running
mm,
blue
yeah, or
or
perilous position.
perilous position. Because perilous position, if you usually run a card, they can get it back. But
Yeah,
um, if this is a card you're really worried about, that's what you run.
Yeah. And this card is just like super annoying to deal with in Django specifically because again it really benefits the Django game plan of like exhausting your opponent's stuff. So you damage their space units that are threatening your lurking TIE Phantom when not a lot of other cards can. And then your lurking TIE Phantom is getting in for consistently 4 damage. And then if you slap a surprise strike on it, it hits for 7 damage in one attack, which is absurd. Um, so yeah, when they're tapping down your space units that you're using to defend against cards like this, and you also can't use your events to remove it, it just like this card in Django is nasty. It can get very, very gross.
Yeah, and if you want to consider like, well, where are the big bombs? This would be considered one of those big bombs.
Yes.
Like you're sitting there and you're pushing with all the other little tempo cards, but then you just drop a lurking TIE Phantom and go, "Yep, good luck.
Yeah. It's like,
Have the
oh,
removal." You spent
damn.
yeah, you spent all of your resources dealing with all the other cards, and you still have a lurking TIE Phantom looking at you and
Yep.
smiling. Like,
Yep. The unfortunate part of lurking type, like I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, like, oh well, if I'm in blue, I can play Concord Dawn Interceptors, which is like a really, really good Sentinel space unit. Um, Unfortunately for you, lurking TIE Phantom has 2 toughness, so Concord Dawn Interceptors can't attack into it and trade with it. And also has raid 2, which means it can always trade with your Concord Dawn Interceptors. So it's always at least for one trading. If you don't have CDI, then it's hitting you for 4 at least. So um, yeah, card's just really troublesome, especially in Django lists.
agreed.
Next card, probably the best one in the deck overall, is Triple Dark Raid. This card's insane. It's a 3-cost event that says look at the top 7 cards of your deck for a vehicle and play it, or you may play it. It costs 5 less. Return it to your hand at the start of the regroup phase. So
Yeah, that's
um,
5 less is stupid.
yeah. It also comes in ready. I'm not sure if I said that in my initial description, but it can
Did
attack
not.
immediately. So uh,
Yep, it makes. Let's just say that during set 2, it made Devastator super devastating.
super devastator. Um,
Yeah, it was bad.
yeah, discounting your space units, making it so they can punch you immediately. Man, it's real good. Really
Well,
couples
it definitely.
well with the next 3 cards we're going to talk about being Elite
Hmm.
P-38 Starfighter, Ruthless Raider, and Fett's Fire Spray. It synergizes with these 3 cards in particular so freaking well. Elite P-38 Starfighter is a new card from Twilight of the Republic. It's a 3/2 for 3. When played and when defeated, you may deal 1 damage to unit, which allows you to immediately trigger your Jango Fett's ability to exhaust something. So, yeah.
And again, with the triple dark raid, being able to return it to your hand at the end of the phase, just broken. So
Yeah.
you're able to use these cards multiple times.
Yep.
So if you're playing a ruthless raider, right? You play a triple dark raid, and you're dealing the 2 damage. You're tapping something down. You're pissing your opponent off, and uh, and then you just play it again a turn later and repeat what you just did. It's
Yeah.
great.
Like, yeah, triple dark raid into Ruthless Raider is like probably the number one thing this deck wants to be doing in terms of like damaging you because you triple dark raid into your Ruthless Raider, deals 2 damage to a unit, 2 to a base. You exhaust that unit that you damage with Django. Then it punches you in the face for
Swing.
4, and then it goes back to their hand. And then next turn they play it, deals another 2 to a unit and another 2 to your base. And then, oh, and also when you kill it, it's going to deal 2 to a unit and 2 to your base. So,
Mhm. Yeah, it's and the cool thing is you can exploit it. You can
yeah.
use this card and it defeats them when you exploit them. So it's just like, oh, so again, if you run any kind of exploit cards, like we would be getting, um, you know, to the end of this list or semi to the end of the list, because the
Mm,
sideboard realistically is going to be determined on what you're expecting to be played.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, the ability to control if it dies or not is just gross.
Yep. 100%. And the last card we were just mentioning is Fett's Fire Spray. You know what this card does. It's a 5/6 in space. If you're playing Boba or Jango, it enters play. When it enters play, you ready it. So it's just 5 damage as soon as it, like 5 damage threatening on board as soon as it comes down. So it also has an ability where you can pay 2 and exhaust a non-unique unit on your enemy's side of the field, which is, yeah, I mean, this card's just good. 5 damage on a big body in space.
Yeah, it definitely can buy you time or close a game.
Yep.
So
It's, yep, very versatile. Very versatile. And the last card we see here in the main board is a card that I personally really like, and that is Heavy Persuader Tank. I believe is oh boy, I think it's a 6/5. I will find that out. It's a 6/5 for 7 with exploit 2, and when played, deal 2 damage to an enemy ground unit. So just synergizes really well with the Jango Fett game plan. Like Chancellor just said, you can exploit your Ruthless Raider, which does the defeat trigger. You can exploit your Elite P-38 Starfighter, which does your defeat trigger. It's just like, yeah, it's a good option
Burrito.
to have.
Yeah, it makes 3 cards really good, and it makes it. I mean, it just the ability to be able to pop something and tap it down, and then they're facing down a 6/5.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's nothing to scoff at. I think the ability to play it for 3, and you're getting its damage plus possibly 2 other units damage on top of that, so you're getting 3 different effects. Normally, that's like the best viable play for a 1 card for 3
Right.
resources.
Right.
Gross.
Yeah. Very gross. Yeah. So in summation, that's the main deck for this Django list that we're looking at. That's a lot of what you're gonna see in these lists. Um, we'll go over like options for the main deck as well as sideboard options all in one, just to like kind of be a little more efficient with our time. One of the cards that these decks can play either in the main, I've seen it most of the time in the side, is the brand new Cad Bane from Twilight of the Republic, which is, I mean, this card's absurd. Um,
Yeah, and I'm surprised the list we looked at didn't have Cad Bane. It might be just a flavor thing for them, but yeah, Cad Bane is insanely good.
yeah. Cad Bane, the new one, Cad Bane Hostage Taker is a 7 mana or 7 resource, 7/7 that says when played, this unit captures up to 3 enemy non-leader units with a total of 8 or less remaining HP, which is crazy. And then on attack, the defending player may rescue a card they own guarded by this unit. If they do, draw 2 cards. So Cad Bane is either giving you lots of resource advantage if you do attack with it, which it's dealing 7 damage, which is a lot. Or
Yeah,
you just sit on the stuff that you captured and be like, okay, kill my Cad Bane or you're not getting your stuff back.
yeah, like haha, fun things for you. But and another thing I just kind of noticed with this, the first list we looked at was like again a space race list. But if you wanted to go more ground, Zuckuss and Forlom and Bosk,
Yeah.
insane cards, including and I'll just stick with those 3 for right now, kind of explaining it mainly because I'm looking at a Django Yellow
Mm.
list, but um, not to try to go off too much of what point you were making, but the ambush effect of it and the buffing things that they do and the boss dealing the damage every time you play an event, it's just insane. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
again, like there's so many ways to build this deck, and it's all affordable,
Yep.
which is
Hmm.
such a pain.
Yeah. Yeah. The deck is just really good. Um, yeah, and this like we said at the start, like this list is not definitively the best way to build it. Like there's so many different ways to build this deck, which is like why it's so good and so efficient and so versatile. Like another sideboard option you can play is Shadowed Intentions, which is a 3 unit or a 3 cost upgrade. Attached unit gains. This unit can't be captured, defeated, or returned to its owner's hand by enemy card abilities. You can play a 1 cost event, Unmasking the Conspiracy. Discard a card from your hand. If you do, look at an opponent's hand and discard a card from it. You can play Bazine Nettle, Spy for the First Order, which is like more hand control stuff if you're worried about like Luke Skywalker's coming down. Um, Yeah, you can play Waylay, which is just like a good cunning card. Return a non-leader unit to the hand. Basically, set your opponent back
Change of
on
heart.
tempo.
Yeah, change of heart. Just being able to, and this is in the sideboard that we're looking at the list, but like the change of heart's funny because you can take it and then exploit it. So
Yep.
realistically, if you can find more exploit, it'd be really cool. Or you can smack them with it.
Yeah,
So
smack them with it and then exploit it if you want.
yeah, smack him with it, exploit it, smack him with it, give it back to him next turn, tap it down with some damage unit or something. It's like it's hilarious.
Yeah, Change of Hearts. Yeah, I love that card actually. Um, Not a lot of lists I see are doing it, but I've seen some lists that have the new Count Dooku in the side, which is Count Dooku Fallen Jedi, an 8 cost 6/6 with Exploit 2 and Overwhelm. When played, for each unit you exploited while playing this card, you may deal damage to an enemy unit equal to the power of the exploited unit, which is sweet. So you can deal a bunch of damage, and if you don't kill it, you can tap it down with Jango. Um, Another good card. Having a hard time making out this card in this side here. Oh, that's Tie Advanced. Yeah, Tie Advanced. It's a 4 cost 3/2, I believe. And when played, you give 2 experience counters to another Imperial unit, which you're playing a decent amount of.
Yeah, it's good to synergize with Triple Dark Raid for sure if you want to go
Mm-hmm.
more aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, and like Chancellor was saying just a second ago, in the yellow Django lists, you can play stuff like Bodhi Rook, which is more hand control. You can play the Forlom Zuckus package, which is just like really strong units for a decent cost that buff each other and give each other unique abilities like Saboteur and Ambush. Um, one of actually, looking at this, one of my favorite cards that I see in Django is not in this list in the main board or the sideboard, and that is Vambrace Flamethrower.
Yeah, in the red list, that is
Yeah.
true.
Attached unit
Vambrace,
gains.
flamethrower, or hot shot.
Oh yeah, or Hot Shot DL44 Blaster, which is uh, a 1 cost red upgrade that gives +2/+0 to unit, or it's a 3 cost yellow Smuggle upgrade that says if played using Smuggle attack, you may attack with the attached unit. So it's kind of like another Surprise Strike, but it comes out of the Smuggle zone, which is always good.
Yeah,
Uh,
and then the Vambrace, flamethrower. Do you have that card up?
yeah. The Van
Yeah,
Brace
go ahead.
Flamethrower, which is a 3 cost red upgrade that with it gives +1/+1 in stats. And attach unit gains on attack. You may deal 3 damage divided as you choose among enemy ground units, which is just like good burst damage or good spread damage that you can tap down with Django after that. Um, I don't know. I don't think you would actually play this card in Django, but you could play like Crate Dragon in the sideboard for those control matchups if they get really annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess really what we're alluding to here is that there's tons of ways to build this deck. There's tons of options for your sideboard. One I really like personally is a 4 cost 3/4 space unit, Strafing Gunship. This unit can
That's
attack
a
units
good
in the ground
card.
arena. While this unit is attacking a ground unit, the defender gets -2/-0. So if you're going against a heavy ground-based deck, heavy ground-based strategy, Strafing Gunship can start answering those cards.
Yeah, and I think Strafing Gunship again, I like against that or in that space race list that we were looking at. I'm kind of surprised it's not in there.
Yeah, you
Is
would
it
think
at
it'd be at
least
least be in the side.
sideboard? Yeah, and again, like we probably say it 1,000 times before we end the video, but you're not going to build this deck necessarily the same as everybody else.
Yeah,
You're going to try to match it to the meta that you're playing, um, or just you're like I don't really want to do anything else. I just want to throw things in space and attack with them.
right,
Um, but if you're truly worried about it, yeah, that card is, um, its ability to be able to just attack the ground units. It's great.
right. And then 3 more cards here that go into like sometimes go into the Django Tarkentown list or into the Django Yellow list are the 2 cost 2/2 shielded Crafty Smuggler, which is pretty good. Or in the yellow version, you can play Cunning, the Card Cunning, which becomes 4 cost, which is like that card's exceptionally good. You can play
Yeah.
Boba Fett Disintegrator, which is a 3/5 that deals damage to a unit if it's exhausted. Um,
Now there are two of them
Now there are
because
2
you're
of
running
them.
some
Yep,
underworld stuff.
to get out those bigger underworld cards.
Also, there's another one on here that I really do like, the Holdout Blaster. It's a one
Yeah,
cost
yeah.
upgrade, gives it +1/+0. But when played, you can have the attached unit deal 1 damage to a ground unit.
Right. Yep. Which
It has to attach to a non-vehicle.
kind of makes everything ISB agent if you think about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you exhausted with Jango. Another one I really like is Imperial Interceptor. 3/2 for 4 in space. When played, you may deal 3 damage to a space unit, so it lets you kind of control the space arena a little bit more. But yeah, essentially what we're trying to say here is like whether you're playing the Tarkentown variant, the yellow variant, I've seen Jango ECL out there. There's a lot of different ways to build this deck, and it's all like extremely efficient and extremely strong. So
Yeah, there's even some green lists out there that I was like, I just found, and I'm like, what the heck is this?
yeah,
It's basically Django yellow with Salacious Crumb, which is actually a really funny combination with it because
yeah,
you're just dealing damage and healing. The Super Laser Tech Resupply and Overwhelming Barrage, with including a Maul.
yes, yeah,
So
and Maul.
and it's underworld based. So you're gonna play Now There Are Two of Them and bust out a Maul or a Cad Bane for what, 5 less? That's disgusting.
Yeah, that is pretty gross.
Or the suckers.
But yeah, we've gone a little longer than I wanted to, but I think that we did a good job covering kind of like the cards that you can expect to see in these Django lists, as well as kind of what their play style is, what their game plan is, how you can play around some of these cards, and kind of like what their favorable matchups are. So with that, I think we're going to call it here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Galaxy Unlimited podcast. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Let us know if you did, and let us know if you want to see more of these total deck breakdowns. Yeah, Chancellor, got anything you want to say to close us out?
I just want to, thank everybody for watching the videos, giving us fun feedback. Criticism is accepted. Of course, like if you're just being rude, like obviously I'm not going to listen to you, but we want to grow. We want to make content that the people want to see. And since we are, still a part of the people, I think we have a good understanding. But at the same time, we might be missing something. Or, if you have a deck idea or a card idea that you think would be really cool, just let us know. And, we can test it, give you some credit for it, and call it a night. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let us know. I'm sure one of the ones that'll come up in the comments is McClunky. I mean, McClunky's just a really good, efficient card. I like McClunky a lot.
Yep.
Definitely has valid room in the deck if you want it to be. And yeah, but anyway, not to open up deck discussion again. But anyway, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you.